Well, hey, everybody. It's Romania Black. And it is becoming painfully obvious that we are getting close to the season finale of the Apothecary Diaries. We only have 3 more episodes this week and 2 more, which is insane. And just so happens we only have 3 chapters left of The Last Eunuch of China. I'm going to miss this book. I really am. We're going to talk about this. We have a long intro, so I hope you're ready because there are a lot of comments to talk about and there's a lot to talk about in our book. So this is going to be a long intro. I'm going to miss The Last Eunuch of China. I don't know if I'll be doing a book club for season 2 or not. It'll just kind of depend on what I find, but if not, it's fine. I'm sure there'll be plenty of comments from the episodes as we go into season 2 that'll keep me busy. So, but yeah, let's get started, shall we? We got a lot to talk about. So, I do have some comments that are detailing back to episodes 16 and 17 to kind of let you know where I'm at in the recording process. But I want to go ahead and start talking about these. So Andreas Zeman 8868 says that the anime is based on the light novel and uses only some visuals from the manga, which is interesting. So it has 15 books so far, 12 available in English. And they say there is enough material for almost 8 seasons, no matter how far the mangas are in the story. Good. If we got 8 seasons of the Apothecary Diaries, I mean, what? We've got how many seasons of Natsume's Book of Friends? We can do the 8 seasons of the Apothecary. We got 8 seasons of My Hero Academia. Why can't we have 8 seasons of the Apothecary Diaries? I don't think that's asking for much. I'm here for it. Let's have this happen, please, and thank you. Lyndon says with episode 17, one other detail that I enjoyed was seeing when MaoMao, dressed as an upper class citizen, was shopping and the street vendors at their stalls didn't dare look at her directly. I don't know if she even noticed that. So yeah, it's kind of like the street vendors, they didn't want to look her way because she was so like upper class and they didn't want to like offend her. And she didn't even know that. And I was like, I didn't catch that either. So I thought that was really cool that you pointed that out, Lyndon. Ashley Pinn 7845 said, if we continue the Sherlock Holmes analogy in episode 17 with MaoMao as Sherlock, Jinshi as Watson, and Gao Shun as the very exasperated Lestrade, would that make Lakan Mycroft? And I was like, ooh, easily as intelligent, if not more so than MaoMao, but prefers to not get involved because he's lazy and unsociable. See, here's my thing. Somebody called Lakan, or Lakan, my gosh, they called him Moriarty, and I was like, no, Suire is Moriarty. I was like, no. But Lakan being Mycroft, I could definitely see that because in the Sherlock stories, Mycroft and Sherlock are siblings. But yeah, Mycroft is maybe even more intelligent than Sherlock, but can be a little bit unsociable and kind of like just disinterested in anything other than their own agenda, which fits Lakan really well. So yeah, if MaoMao is Sherlock, Lakan is Mycroft. I love that analogy. I think that works perfect. Ms. Negative 7568 says that they agree that Jinshi wouldn't be in line for the throne due to the whole baby swap scandal. Now, Anime Annie and Miss Negative kind of have differing viewpoints, so I want to put them kind of back to back. But they say that I'm confused on him not being born from a legitimate marriage. I thought all the emperor's male children had a chance at the throne regardless if they were born from his wife or his concubine. In episode 1, they mentioned the emperor had other male children with the concubines. Surely those kids were legitimate. I haven't done any research. Anytime someone immediately follows up a statement with, I haven't done any research, as a teacher and a rhetorician, I just zone out. I was like, so you're just talking out of what you think. It's just conjecture. Loman would be disappointed. So I don't think in episode 1, the current emperor, I don't think has any other male children except for Jinshi that they're passing off as the brother. I think that Gyokyo's daughter is the only child he has. He had a son with Lihua, but he died. So I don't think there are any other male children because otherwise Jinshi wouldn't be trying to work so hard to get his brother, to have another kid. So I don't think that's correct, but someone can back me up on that. I feel like that the current emperor's only children are Gyokyo's daughter, Jinshi, and Lihua's dead son. I think that's it so far. I don't think there's any other ones. Now, Jinshi's grandpa, aka the emperor's dad, we don't know if he has any other sons, but I doubt it, right? Other than the one that died. Otherwise, you would think they would have mentioned them by now. So then that leads us to Anime Annie. Anime Annie has two different points, one from episode 16 and one from episode 17. Anime Annie says in episode 16, it was said in episode 10 that Aduo was the current emperor's only concubine at the time that she gave birth to her baby, so the baby would have been considered a legitimate heir for the then prince. But I believe the only exception would be if at the time she was brought in as a low-ranking concubine, in which case the baby would be illegitimate. However, considering her ranking prior to her leaving the imperial palace, I believe Aduo wasn't a low-ranking concubine. I don't know. They're not really clear on that. They say she was a nurse's daughter, which makes me think she's low-ranking, but then he really respected her, but I don't know. Regardless of whether Jinshi is legitimate or illegitimate, he doesn't want to be emperor. So he's like, come on, let's get me another brother so I can just stay out of the woodwork and we're fine. And then the translation is right for Jinshi calling MaoMao the apothecary girl. But your pointing it out made me realize that I don't think Jinshi has called MaoMao by her name once. Instead, he refers to her as Kusuria or apothecary. I kind of like that about him because it does acknowledge her skill as an apothecary and to me shows the respect he has for MaoMao's abilities in said field. I really like that because yeah, even though the romantic in me wants him to call her MaoMao, I kind of like it because her whole thing has been this series that she's not a courtesan, she's not a servant girl, she's an apothecary. That's what she wants to be. And so the fact that he calls her that is kind of his way of respecting her. And I think that's really, really sweet. Then in episode 17, she said, it's a little confusing with all the titles, but the former emperor's mother is the one who made Loman a eunuch, not the current Empress Dowager. The one who ordered it would be the current emperor's grandmother, though we don't know if it's the grandmother by blood or the grandmother because she had the role as Empress Dowager. Royal family lineage is complicated and becomes even more so when you only refer to people by their role or title instead of their names. Yeah, so basically Jinshi's great-grandmother is the one that made Loman a eunuch, but not the current Empress Dowager, which I'm glad you clarified because we haven't gotten a lot with the Empress Dowager, but she kind of gives off a vibe of, I don't trust her, but we don't know much about her, so we could be very, very wrong about that. And then Sarah, CE5W4, says, I think I mentioned it already, but Lakan is voiced by Kirimoto Takuya, who voices the mouse yokai in Natsume, which is hilarious to me, in the Cute Chick episode. That was a surprising discovery when I watched the episode because Suiren is voiced by Mika Doi, who surprisingly voices Nanase in Natsume's Book of Friends. She runs a tight ship in a whole different way. Yeah, I like that we have two Natsume voice actors who are sort of connected in this series. That's really fun. And then Red the Best had a long comment, so I'm going to get through it here with you all. Basin is a military guy who's a bit ranked. MaoMao is a servant with no rank. So Basin accompanies MaoMao on these expeditions not to spy on her, unless he's spying for Jinshi, but to give her a bit of legitimacy, which I hadn't thought about Basin doing that, but yeah, he does. I think it was episode 3 where MaoMao was supposed to nurse the consort, but the ladies in waiting didn't let her in, and Jinshi had to go with her so she could examine her patient. Same deal. These people wouldn't let her into their homes or listen to her without a backer. It's my guess that's why Jinshi wanted her to take the court ladies exam to give her a bit of rank so that she could do these things on her own. And I hadn't thought of it that way either, but I'm totally on board with that. Yeah, I feel like even though we joked in the episode that Jinshi was trying to like get his fantasy of being able to marry MaoMao because she was a lady of rank, I think it also was more so the fact that he wanted her to be able to have a little more free reign and to do so without having to have a bodyguard or someone to legitimize what she's doing. So I thought that was really cool. They also say that in the book, the younger brother was having a breakdown. The younger brother having the breakdown and telling his brothers, his father's ideas, that didn't happen. The two older brothers start arguing and the youngest just sits there in quiet thought. Where I'm at right now in the novel, the splitting of the business hasn't been mentioned. Interesting. It wasn't until this point in the book that I realized that MaoMao's dad's business, or Loman's business, is inside the brothel house. He has an office in the building that people can go to. I just assumed it was near the house. I don't know if it was mentioned before and I didn't pick up on it, but yes. I kind of wondered that too, because every time MaoMao has gone to the Verdigris house, she's gone to this little side room that looks like a little pharmacy. That must be his office, and that's what she's been going to this whole time, because she just walks in without asking and nobody questions it. So I'm like, oh, now that makes sense. Then it says, Lakan brought his own couch to Jinshi's office. I guess there wasn't one there for guests when he first came to talk about the brothers and tell the story about the courtesan, and he left it there in the book for when he came back. It must be a weird power play he has going on. The fact that he brought the couch in, the fact that he brought the couch in the novel and was like, here, let's talk. And Jinshi's like, what the fudge? Why are you bringing furniture into my room? Yeah, Lakan is like the father-in-law that's trying to assert dominance, especially because he knows that technically Jinshi has more power than him. Wild. Absolutely wild. So I know that those comments took a while, but I was really, really grateful for them. And I'm really super excited that you all have had these amazing comments, which is fun. But I do want to talk about the novel just a wee bit before we start. So I'm going to go ahead and get my episode set up and loading while we're talking about such things. But yeah, so I want to talk about the novel just a wee bit while we're loading this all up here. So chapter 13, I liked a little bit better than chapter 12. It focuses a bit more on Sun Yat-ting. This is around the 1960s at this point, so it's been like 40 years of this story, which is wild to me. But as we've talked in previous chapters, Sun Yat-ting becomes a landlord and he manages to get on the bad side of some of the eunuchs because he wanted to unify the management of the Taoist and Buddhist temples in Beijing. And he said he made quite a few enemies that regarded him as a traitor to Taoism. But he was very cautious and prudent about most of his conduct. And so some people tried to make him seem like he embezzled money in the temple and tried to accuse him of it. We end up finding out that he mainly just did a Temu swap. He bought some clothing and resold it at a higher price. And I'm like, that's all he's convicted of. And it's it didn't even amount to that much. So they kind of let him off the hook with it. But what I thought was interesting was in chapter 13, they talk about Puyi, the former emperor, that an editor from a publishing house came to interview Sun Yat-ting about His Majesty living in Beijing and had become an ordinary citizen and was working on an autobiography with the aid of a ghostwriter. And the editor hoped to learn more about his life, both in the Imperial Palace of Beijing and Manchukuo. And Sun Yat-ting was like, I have very little to say, thinking it wise to hold his tongue. The editor keeps coming back, and finally Sun Yat-ting tells him about the incident with the revolver that the emperor had with him. But I thought that was interesting. It says that Puyi finished his autobiography from emperor to citizen, and the publishing house sent Sun Yat-ting a large typescript to solicit his opinion. Many eunuchs at the temple came to borrow it, curious to know what the emperor had to say about them. At Sun Yat-ting's suggestion, a new section on eunuchs was added. After the book's publication, Sun Yat-ting received a complimentary copy. He read it carefully and sighed with deep emotion. It's no easy thing for His Majesty to have revealed so much. Now I'm kind of curious about this, right? I mean, I think it's interesting to me that the emperor became a citizen. I mean, in this day and age where people in power rarely step down and live to tell the tale or choose to do so, it's fascinating to me. So who knows? Maybe we'll have to check out that book. Who knows? But anyway, so it seems like the National Political Consultative Conference happens, and a total of 15 aged eunuchs received invitations to give witness accounts of the final years of Qing, China's last imperial dynasty. Now, the sad thing is that a lot of the eunuchs tell their stories in this chapter, and by the end of the chapter, Sun Yat-ting talks about how many of them are passing away, which is sad. Really sad. And I felt really sad reading this towards the end because you know it's going to happen. You know he passes away, and you know he's the last eunuch of China, which means all the other eunuchs have to die. But when you're reading about it, it just feels like you're watching a grandparent talking about their family dying or their friends dying, and it's just really sad. And so this chapter was kind of made me feel very heartbroken for him because I can't imagine, after everything he's gone through, he outlives so many of the other eunuchs, right? Or all of them, essentially. So they had this forum they bring in, and all the eunuchs tell their tales. What got me was when it finally comes to Sun Yao Ting, like, I nearly cried reading this because it said, he's like, my family was a bit better off than the former eunuchs talking. We owned an adobe house with a small piece of land. My father had high expectations of my future. That's why I learned to read and write. It was my father who castrated me. His voice cracked with emotion as he remembered the most painful moment of his life. But then another eunuch beside him said, it was also my father who castrated me. After many years, it's still hard for me to talk about it. It happened in the 31st year of Emperor Guangxu's reign. I lay on the Kong, and my father cut off the root of my life with a knife. There was nothing to relieve the pain or stop bleeding. I simply passed out, woke up, and passed out again. As you all know, a tube had to be planted into the urethra. Otherwise, you would be left with no hole after the scab formed, and you'd have to go through the operation all over again. It took about 100 days for the wound to heal. In the end, I was more dead than alive because of the terrible pain. What grieved me the most was my mother passed away just when I was able to walk on my feet again. She did not live to see the day when I entered the imperial palace. And it's just, they all talk about their training and everything that they did, but it's just so, like, in that moment, Sun Yao Ting finds out that he wasn't the only one that experienced that same horrible thing. And they all talk about how when people in the crowd ask, well, why'd you all become eunuchs? And they're like, because we were poor. Because that was the only way you could make money. And it's just like, to show the extent and sacrifice people will make to survive, it's incredible. It's just absolutely crazy. And so they talk about the eunuchs and everything like that, and how fortunate they are to have lived as long as they have and secured a place, that seems safe. Then the chapter goes into the Great Turbulence, the Cultural Revolution that began in 1966, that turned many things upside down in China. The remaining eunuchs in Beijing, along with the Buddhists, Taoists, Catholics, and Christians, were gathered at a farm in Jibeiwang, a suburban Beijing, to undergo reform through labor. Seems like something else that's happened in history, but who am I to say? I wasn't there. But yeah, basically the Red Guards, as they're called throughout the rest of this chapter, were not great to Sun Yao Ting at all. They weren't great to any of the eunuchs. And in fact, they beat a lot of the eunuchs because they didn't understand their purpose. I think the hardest part about this is that Sun Yao Ting, he kind of starts to worry. He's like, I'm getting old. And he realizes that he had some gold saved back, like 3 taels of gold, which is not very much, to try to live off of as he got old. But the Red Guards find out about it and they make him confiscate it, and they take his gold away. And they threaten to beat him if he doesn't. And it's really, really sad, right? And they also, as punishment, like as he's working out in the gardens and doing this manual labor, like in his 60s, they basically make him wear this wooden plaque while he's working that says landlord on it. And it's almost to mock him. And it's like, it's pretty cruel. Like some of the stuff they do in this chapter, I'm like, and they tear up a lot of cultural things. And some of the eunuchs are like, that's part of like our cultural protection. And that's like sites of cultural reverence. And they just don't know. And it's just, it feels so horrible to see like all this stuff that these eunuchs have come to really value and just get absolutely torn apart. So yeah, so they talk about in this, Sun Yao Ting, his brother ends up working for the Red Guard, but his brother comes to find out that Sun Yao Ting's been harassed by the Red Guard, and he's like, oh, well, I don't want to be, associated with them and hurt you. So he ends up like giving up his guard and everything, which is nice. But he's like, things are going rough in the village. What are we going to do about your treasure, which is Sun Yao Ting's genitals? Sun Yao Ting hesitated, feeling a bit dazed. His brother was talking about his severed genitals, which the family had kept all these years. On New Year's Eve, they used to bring out the treasure and hold a sacrificial ceremony to pray for peace and good fortune on his behalf. They are wiping out the old cultural items in the village, and we've been told we have to get rid of the treasure. What can we do? Sun Yao Ting scratched his head. Throw it away. It'll save us a lot of trouble. What? His brother was flabbergasted. I thought you'd want me to bring it here. No. He curtly swept his hands. With the sweep of his hand, he said, thus the treasure that they'd kept for over half a century was thrown away. Shortly after Sun Yat-ting was made to face the music, in the evening some red guards took him to a separate room in the temple for interrogation, asking him to make a true confession. You were a slave to the emperor and empress in the palace. How much gold and silver did you hoard? He's like, I didn't hoard any gold or silver. Well, that's impossible. I have 3 taels of gold left, and they made him give it away. So the idea that they had established in the story that the genitals from the eunuchs, they were supposed to be buried with them. Like, they went through all that trouble chapters ago to bury the one eunuch with his genitals, and now they're just like, Sun Yat-ting's like, I don't want you all to get in trouble because the Red Guards don't understand, and they're going to hurt you if they think I'm hoarding something that I shouldn't be. So he just got rid of it. But I'm like, that's your culture believes that you don't get to fully go into heaven or be reborn as a human completely if you don't have those. And he just gave it up because he didn't want his family to get hurt. I was like, I read that and I was like, no, you've been hoarding. You've been keeping that the whole time. And they threw it away? No. So it is wild. But anyway, so the rest of the chapter is just talking about him working in the gardens and just doing manual labor and just talking about it. Although they do bring up Jinshi at some point in this. They brought her up and how like she was crazy. It was when they were telling the stories about, it said no one, the Empress Jinshi, who she is fascinating. It says no one surpassed Jinshi in caprice and malice, remarked one of the eunuchs, who had once waited on the notorious Empress Dowager. She liked others to address her as old Buddha, but she took offense over the most trifling matters, and not a day passed without a eunuch getting chastised or beaten. When one of her eunuchs made a mistake, the others would get implicated. That's why she always had a crowd kneeling in the hall waiting to receive a beating. I'm sure you all know about this incident. In a rage, she forced an old eunuch to eat his own feces. He was eventually tortured to death in this way. I was like, oh my God. She's like, I have such a morbid fascination with her because she's this terrifying empress that just rose up through the ranks, and she's awful, like a terrible human being. But I'm kind of like, how did you like do this? And it's just fascinating. But yeah, I feel bad for Sun Yat-ting. He's not having a great time. And we have 2 chapters left. And I'm like, like the endurance of our dear Sun Yat-ting. It is wild to me, I tell y'all. But yeah, so I've spent nearly 21 minutes, but I'm going to be sad when this book is over and I've only got 2 chapters left, and you know it's getting down to like the nitty gritty, and there's not a lot of chapter left, so I'm like, I kind of have an idea of where we're going with it, but I'm not ready for that. The only good thing is knowing that we have a season 2 of this to follow up with, so yeah, I'm sorry you all had to wait for that, but I hope you enjoyed my little update and all the comments, but I'm ready to start episode 22 of the Apothecary Diaries, y'all. I hope you all are as well. So we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. This was a setup episode. The nerve. The nerve, the gumption, and the gall to make this a setup episode. I wanted to see Lakan get his just desserts now, damn it. Fine. You're going to make us wait till next week for the penultimate episode of the season? Fine. This was a really good episode. Oh my God. I loved this. This is a good episode. A lot of herbology, a lot of horticulture going on, some agronomy. I knew somewhere about, not necessarily blue roses, but I know that you can take white flowers and put dye like in their roots and stuff and make them like suck it up and absorb it. And I want to say that we did that in science class in middle school, maybe. Could have even been grade school that we did that in science class. I remember doing it because I remember we had some white flowers, and for Valentine's Day, we took red dye and we would put it in there, and they would suck them up. They weren't roses though. They were like, I don't know if they were lilies or whatever they were. They'd suck up the red dye And I think they were like just cheaper flowers because roses are expensive. So they were like cheap flowers, but they'd suck up the red dye. And for Valentine's Day, they'd turn reds and pinks and whites, and it was all very cute. Also, my school colors in grade school were red and white, so it was very thematic. But still, I kind of remember doing that science experiment, but let's go through this. I do like the idea of having our blue butterfly. Blue is a very distinct color. Especially in the world of colorology, I suppose, because blue is not a very, I don't want to say this the wrong way. It's a natural color, but there are lots of things that are not naturally blue. Blue can be a very artificial color. And it also, like in your indigos and dyes, it also, I feel, is a more luxurious color. So because it looks unnatural and kind of, unique, it has this luxurious feel to it, kind of like some purples can. And Lakan's eyes are blue, so I'm not surprised that he would pick like his favorite color being something related to himself. But okay, so Gyokyo, she's going to have a baby. Jinshi's like, good, have a boy, and that way I'm off the hook. Like, that's all he's hoping for, right? He's like, just let me be off the hook and we're fine. Also, Gyokyo's daughter is the cutest. She's so sweet, but also dim genes. Sorry, Emperor, they are some recessive genes because Jinshi looks like Aduo. Gyokyo's daughter looks exactly like her. Your genes, sir, are not dominant. At least not in this anime. Now, her son or daughter, whoever she has, may come out looking exactly like him. Who knows? But, I mean, good for Gyokyo's daughter being pretty like she is. At least her hair is like a little darker there. But she's so cute. And I like MaoMao being like, man, are kids perceptive? Can they sense, when someone's pregnant? Here's the thing. MaoMao has not been around Gyokyo and her daughter when they're like by themselves. So there's a very good chance that, Gyokyo could have told her daughter like your mom's having a baby, but we can't tell anybody. And she's probably just old enough to, barely speak or do anything like the sort. I don't blame them for not taking her to the garden party because like her in that state, they don't want anybody to know that she's pregnant because then it'll be like, oh no, an heir to the throne. Especially, I could see why it would be in bad taste because here's Gyokyo clearly showing, and then you're introducing a new concubine, and it's like, have fun. I'm already got a bun in the oven, but good luck to you. Even though Lolan does not seem remotely interested in having a kid. She just seems like she is there she's not even there for a good time. She's just there. I'm like, you are clearly here for some kind of political agenda, but do I think we're going to touch on Lolan by the end of this season? I don't think so. I think Lolan is going to be a season 2 priority. I feel like our goals the next 2 episodes are to put Lakan in his place and for MaoMao to be like, look, just because you're a sperm donor doesn't mean that you're my dad, so go away. Get out and leave me alone and just let me be. And I feel like that MaoMao's gonna have to take care of her dad this season and deal with him and make him back off or learn his lesson somehow. And then I feel like season 2 opens up the doors for more focus on Suirei and Lolan and seeing what all is down with that. And then we have Gyokyo being pregnant. So there's a lot of threads that are slowly like starting to unravel from the main rope here that we can definitely tie on to and expand in season 2. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited we don't have to wait very long for that. So that's going to be really exciting. But yeah, I also like MaoMao kind of like, she's not around little kids very much because she's the little kid that was around the brothel. So, her noticing how perceptive Gyokyo's daughter is really fun. But also I like poor Hongmian. Hongmian's like, she's like, maybe I should also start a family. And, she has like this vision of her with this man and this baby. But MaoMao brings up a really sad point where she's like, even if she did get a proposal, they'd probably never let her leave. And then she says this line, being too good at one's job can be a curse at many times. I take a lot of pride in my work, but at my job, it's like when you do good work, there's often a lot of things that come with that. Like, for example, when you work really hard and you're good at your job, people start to expect a lot more of you, or you start to take on extra duties and things like that. Or in the case of this fantasy world, you don't get to leave and have your own family if you're doing a real good job. So, but maybe MaoMao doesn't want her own family. I think this is probably the closest we've ever seen MaoMao be to baby fever, and it's just the fact that she wants to use Gyokyo's daughter in an experiment. To be like, you're perceptive. What else can you know, little kid? But yeah, she's so cute. And you know what? When Gyokyo's daughter kind of laughs like that, she looks a little bit like Jinshi. All I need is Jinshi to be like, kind of like brotherly to his half sister, but anyway. Also, the shade that MaoMao throws when she's like, time flies when, your days are so fulfilling. And then she says in her monologue, she's like, in comparison, the 2 months at Master Jinshi's office felt like forever. Which poor Jinshi, if Jinshi heard her say that, he would think that he's the worst house guest and it would be miserable. But the fact of the matter was they were solving all these cases and it was very high stakes. So time probably did feel like it was dragging. I'm like, girl, if Jinshi knew. Sometimes MaoMao says things and it's like, I don't know if MaoMao means to be as dry as she is, but she definitely gets that from Lakan, whether she likes it or not. I just also love that she gives... she's like, oh, do you want to draw pictures? And she's like, yes. Aw. And so then I like that MaoMao draws a poisonous mushroom and Hongmian's like, no. Draw a flower. So anyway, I also love, now that I know, that Lakan brought that couch into the room with his thing just so he could come in there and annoy Jinshi. It is the funniest damn thing. And we tend to forget because Lakan is very... lackadaisy about his approach with it, but he's a military strategist, so he has rose the ranks and is there for a reason. He's good at his job, which, again, we talk about those bearing curses, and Jinshi's like, I'm good at my job, and I'm bearing this curse of having to talk with you. But the blue roses, so he's like, oh, have you never seen one before? And he says, the striking petals are so beautiful. And then he talks about how the palace used to be all over with them. And Jinshi's like, I don't remember that. Jinshi's like, you're bullshitting. But I do think it brings up a good point of Lakan Lakan is kind of like MaoMao. He likes to experiment. And when he gets bored, he experiments with things. And so it would not surprise me if he came up with the blue roses and took them to town and took them to the brothel and used them to try and woo MaoMao's mom. It would not surprise me at all. And she probably would have found it interesting being like, well, how did you do this? And he'd have to explain it. So that all feels very in character about him. But Jinshi is just like, he's like, blue roses don't exist. I love that Jinshi's like, stop, go away. Like, he's just not impressed by him at all. And then Lakan's like, oh, but they do, in fact. Like, he's just like, I'm here to argue with you and just make your day miserable. And he's like, I'd love to appreciate them with everyone again. He's like, well, don't you think you could do it? Could it be done? And Jinshi's like, with your power, there must be nothing outside your reach. And Jinshi's like, is that a challenge? He's like, well, if such a rose did exist, I'd love to see it too. And that's when Lakan's like, oh, well, then it's settled. He's like, I can't wait to see one. And the thing about me that gets it is that Jinshi's like, wait, what? So he talks about, as he's leaving, he's like, I hope to see them at next month's garden party, if you can muster it. And Jinshi's like, I hate every second of this. As soon as he walks away. I mean, the thing about it is, in all reality, Jinshi didn't have to take up this challenge. Jinshi could have shown up and been like, yeah, I tried. I couldn't get the blue roses. They're out of season. You're a kooky old man. Har, laugh it up, whatever. He could have done that. He could have just said, we're not going to do this bet. It's dumb. It's not feasible. No, not going to take on any more work and do this. I'm busy enough. But Jinshi has a little bit of pride, and he doesn't want to be done up by this man and shown up by him at all. And so he's like, I don't rub it in. He's like, just see. I love that he says, ask every florist in the nation. Like, he's like, Gaoshin, just do the small favor for me. Just go ask every florist in the nation about these roses so they can try to figure out what to do. And then roses aren't in season, so this is a problem. So MaoMao shows up and he's like, we were talking about getting together to admire blue roses. He does look really tired there, and MaoMao notices. She's like, oh. She's like, blue roses? She's like, he looks a little bit more worse for wear than usual. He's like, I know you're just an apothecary. And she's like, well, why is he tired? MaoMao also doesn't want to admit it, but whenever she sees somebody in need, she does want to help out, which is very different from Lakan. So I'll probably bring Whiteboard Coon out for next week because it feels like we're going to have a confrontation between Lakan and MaoMao, which, as the penultimate episode, good. But I feel like while Lakan and MaoMao, they both have this Sherlock experimentation, just part of their DNA that makes them definitely father and daughter. And while they have a dryness to their humor and a morbidity to their humor that links them together, there is a compassion within MaoMao that is very absent from Lakan. Lakan views people as pieces on a board and uses them without emotion and doesn't care what happens to them as long as he gets what he wants. And MaoMao is the only person that he sees, which I'm assuming is because she looks like her mom, with the exception of her dad's eyes. So I feel like that's the case. And MaoMao could very well on the surface, when you look at MaoMao, you think she's kind of like Lakan. You think, oh, well, she doesn't care about people's well-being. She just uses people like him. No, that's not it at all. Like when she's solving a case, she might not romanticize or idealize or dwell on the emotions like Jinshi does, for example, but she very much has compassion towards people. And if she thinks someone's suffering, she will go above and beyond with her Sherlock ability to try and help them. She did that with Jinshi. She's done that with the brothers. She's done that by trying to help the servant woman. Like she's to figure things out. Like she listened to the doctor's story and understood and could, kind of relate to his calamities. And so she doesn't, outwardly show it, but she very much is someone that shows compassion towards people. Whereas Lakan feels like he's very sleazy and he does not at all. And that's one of their biggest differences, right? And so then she's like, why are you so tired? What's going on? And she's like, I do know something about blue roses. And then I've sold them before to make some quick cash. And we see like all of the dyes and everything with how they turn everything blue. But she's like, I've sold them to make some quick cash with the courtesans. And then she's like, did they really say they saw a blue rose? And he's like, yes. And so she's like, is there some new popular hallucinogen? And he's like, no, that would ruin the whole nation. He's like, no, that's not what it is. And he's like, is it impossible? And she says, what is it that you want? And he's like, I need some by the garden party. And she's like, well, that's, 2 months before these roses are supposed to bloom. And she's like, I'll find a way to turn him down. And so that's when MaoMao goes, oh, she says his reaction of this style of forcing people to attempt the impossible, that sounds like Lakan. That sounds like that creepy man who is it's really sad and very powerful how MaoMao does not call him by name, and she does not refer to him as her father, and she does not want to talk about him because he's a terrible person. And she's like, I'm not going to give him the dignity of responding to him by name. She's like, this man, huh? Okay. And I feel like once she finds out that this is Jinshi being challenged by Lakan, she's like, you know what? Challenge accepted. She's like, was this brought up by a certain strategist? And Jinshi doesn't want to answer the question because he doesn't want to get MaoMao involved in that way. But he's like, yes. Like the way he says it, he's just like, I don't want you to get involved. And I know you don't like this man and I don't want to bring it up. But yeah, he's an asshole. And yeah, I have to deal with him. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to take it on. And he's like, are you sure? She's like, well, I don't know, but I'll try my best. And I'm like, she's like, no. She's like, I don't want to just run from him. I love it. She's like, I want to confront him. And the way she says it, she has this smile on her face. She's like, I'm going to take a swing at smashing his creepy monocle. What is so ironic is that when she has that smile behind her hands with the folds of her, when she has the smile underneath the sleeves, she looks like Lakan. Like Lakan would give that creepy smile with those blue eyes. Like she has that same demeanor when she gets in that mode. And I'm sure she doesn't realize it, or if she does, she's like, she might be disgusted by it, but she just accepts it. Oh, it's great. And so that's when they go to Liyue's palace, the Crystal Palace, and get the greenhouse from her. So yeah, what I really like about it is that she gives her the book. She's like, it's the emperor's favorite book. She's like, I got it from a certain brothel. And Li Hua's like, thank you. Yes, I will go impress my husband with this. Absolutely. Or, I mean, her emperor. She's not the dowager. So yeah, they may, and I like that Jinshi's like, what are we going to use this for? And she's like, it's a greenhouse. We're going to grow the roses and help get them to bloom earlier than the 2 months they normally would. Now, poor MaoMao, her wound opening up and keeping on. I'm like, I'm surprised it's not got infected because, girl, come on now. But I like they bring back a little Xiaolon to help, which is great. And Gao Shun's like brought her friend to chaperone and help out. But I love the little shot there where Jinshi's like, you shouldn't push yourself so hard. And then we see Jinshi freaking out with her leg. And he's like he's pointing to Gao Shun being like, her leg's bleeding. Her leg's bleeding. Like he's freaking out. And Gao Shun's like, yeah, yep, it is. I love it. And Jinshi like grabbing her leg being like, we have to help her. Jinshi is such a doter. Look, Jinshi can be very youthful at times, but he is completely devoted to MaoMao. And he also he gets so youthful whenever he's like, but she's hurt. We have to help her. And all this, like he tries to go above and beyond to just help her and point that out to Gao Shun. And Gao Shun's like, you are so in love, sir. I'm like, then do some better matchmaking, Gao Shun. Come on now. So her friend comes to help her, which of course she's used to doing laundry and the dishes over in the rear palace. This is probably a lot more fun than that. And she gets to hang out with MaoMao, which is super cute. So yeah, they get all of the roses together, but MaoMao, girl, doing the MVP work, like sitting up at night, keeping the temperature hot. She is right. I have a terrible green thumb and I kill like nearly every flower I touch. So I don't have the talent. My mother's a really good gardener. I either overwater or I underwater. I have like an aloe vera plant that I'm keeping alive in a bonsai tree. That's all I got. That's all I'm doing. I'd love to do more, but I usually just like, sometimes plants are fickle. And if you don't know what you're doing, temperature can kill them easy. Watering or overwatering or lack of water can. It's like plants can be really, really tender to take care of and very, very, very delicate. And MaoMao's like, what I like about this scene of her tending them is she doesn't want to leave anybody else in charge, because if they don't know what they're doing, everything could be ruined. But also there's a two-sided underlying part to it. Not just the fact that she doesn't want to trust people with the task because they might ruin it. But one, it's almost like she doesn't want to let Jinshi down, because she told Jinshi she'd help and she got all this orchestrated. She doesn't want to let him down. But two, she wants to get Lakan's goat. Now, however these blue roses are going to get Lakan's goat, other than Jinshi proving that he could do the impossible, which Lakan's like, meh, meh, meh. Other than that, I feel like, those are the two main reasons why she goes through all of this. But yeah, them taking the flowers out into the sunlight, watering them, and then Gao Shun brings them the little steamed buns. I like that they match them. Like MaoMao's is green and hers is pink. It's super cute. And then I noticed that what's interesting is you see that Li Hua, all her maids keep following them to see what's up. And like, they're just being nosy and want to see what's happening. But it is super cute. Also, the guys freaking out about the eunuchs freaking out, because they are in the rear palace. So these are eunuchs freaking out about the caterpillar. And then she's like, it's fine. She just tosses it out. Hilarious. Love it. So yeah, and then they have to hurry and carry them in out of the rain because they don't want them to get too wet. Poor MaoMao, though, she was exhausted. I just wanted Jinshi to give her like a massage or something, but I know we're asking way too much at this early stage of their relationship. But I just wanted that for them. Dang it. Why can't we have nice things? Because she does look just exhausted throughout all this episode. But she's like, no, I'm not giving up until I get this all ready for the garden party. So then we have the nails. The red manicured nails were in the OP. The mom had them. I feel like her with the manicure is very much tying to her mother. Now, whether the mom was taught the manicure from Lakan and she's trying to guilt trip him and make him feel bad, or the mom showed the nails to him and that wooed him and MaoMao's trying to bring it up again to mock him. I don't know, but I feel like she didn't just start this manicure for no reason. She didn't just show up with red nails and giving everybody a manicure just for nothing. I feel like this is like a long game scenario where she's trying to because now all of them have manicures. Like she's trying to get under his skin in subtle little tiny ways. Cause she says that it's all the rage at the house, at the Verdigris house. And all the girls that are being nosy, suddenly they all want manicures too. And then we see everybody, all the concubines are getting them, right? All the servant girls have them. And they're like, oh, you did it too, MaoMao. And they're like, that's so cute. And they're like, it's been really popular recently. And she's like, indeed. Poor MaoMao, she looks exhausted. But yeah, there's the dye and stuff to do the manicures. The high-ranking concubines are always at the cutting edge of fashion. Mm-hmm. Yep. And she gave them all the manicures as well. But what does MaoMao... And she's like, oh, that's pretty. But what does MaoMao say about hers? She said that hers isn't as nice. She's like, it seems like a waste of time. But yeah, so then she's like, and Lady Hongmian, though, prefers work over fashion. I like Lady Hongmian's like, I'm not getting my nails painted. I'm not in on the trends. And then she puts the spoon down. And she says, I finished tasting for poison, so I'll go back to the Crystal Pavilion for now. And they're like, oh, already? Which... I guess I'm glad that there was no, when I was in the reaction, I thought that there was poison in her food. And I was like, oh, and I thought when they said already, they were talking about there already being poison again. But no, she just said she was going back to Liyue's to look at the roses. And she's like, the garden party's coming up. And that's when Go Gyokyo was like, I'm not going to that one because we want to hide the pregnancy and let Lady Lolan have her moment. Poor MaoMao though, she's so tired. I feel so bad for her. And like her legs all hurt and everything. She needs to get I want her wounds to heal up and that leg is not healing. And it worries me because I don't want it to get infected, right? I'm like, girl, and your arm probably is not any good. We haven't seen it in a while, but if you're testing poisons on yourself, it's probably not good either. Whenever the one friend had her come to hurry to the greenhouse, I thought something was wrong, but it was a bloom. And she's like, we just might make it in time. So yeah, there's all of the beautiful flowers and everything, which is nice. We see everybody playing their instruments. Sweet Ray has just evaded. She's just gone. I can't believe it. But yeah, but then Gaoshin and them are like, we haven't been able to visit the apothecary the past few days because they've been getting ready. Oh, but then MaoMao shows up with the roses. Poor Jinshi, you can tell he feels bad at how tired she is. Oh, it's so sad. I want MaoMao to get a good sleep after this, but she's already facing Lakan again, so. And like her lips and everything, like she just looks exhausted. But she also, that look on her face, like her lips are kind of dry. They remind me of her mom's, and she looks exhausted. She's like, we were gonna get these blue roses to work because this is step one of getting back at him. Step one. So we have Lolan show up. She's dressed very traditional compared to her other garb. We have all of these different officiates that are there. And then we have, you can see Li Shu, you can see Li Hua, and you can see the Dowager, the Empress, and everybody's just gathered. And then Lolan shows up in, she has the traditional colors that Aduo was wearing. And they're like, oh, that's Master Shisho's daughter. I don't know what exactly to expect from her because on the surface, she could care less about this emperor. She seems like she doesn't give a shit about being there. And to me, it very much seems like a political move. The more we get into the emperor's mother, which is, I guess, yeah, it would be the former emperor's mom, or I guess the great-grandmother, I suppose. The more we get to about the great-grandmother, because she's the one that made Loman a eunuch. She's the one that's friend with the Shisho guy. She seems kind of maybe like a Shishi model, right? She seems a little bit dastardly, and we kind of have just gotten little hints of her. She seems a little bit dastardly. I feel like Lolan being here is just a political move. Shisho wants to use the fact that he knew the emperor's grandma, as a way to get Lolan into all this. They don't even look related. I'm like, is she just posing as his daughter? Is she just here for political reasons and that's it? And she's just doing her duty. Whenever he says, do you see anything that needs improvement? I was like, that's rough. He's like, hold nothing back. How uggo is my daughter? And I was like, she's so pretty. I don't have anything against Lolan. I think she's pretty and she's eccentric and quirky and weird, but I don't think she wants to be there, and he's just forcing her to be there against her will. So fun times. But then, as the Emperor is about to talk about her, that's when Jinshi shows up. Bitch. And he has the little pin in his hair, his little hairpin there. She's about to make an impression on the Emperor. I'm like, Jinshi, your sweetheart. Jinshi, Gyokyo stayed back because she didn't want to cause a scene, so you decided to do it instead. He shows up with the gift in the vase, and it's the flowers of all the different colors, right? Of the blues and reds and greens and yellows and the black rose. It's all different colors there. And they're all like, what? They're like, that's impossible. And Jinshi brings it up and gives it to the Emperor, which the Emperor was expecting it. He knew it was coming. And he says it may be entertaining to enjoy the beauty of these buds while imagining how they look at full bloom. And he's like, yes, they are beautiful. I'm like, he knew this was coming. Interesting. And all of them are like, psh, this eunuch. The attention that Jinshi gets. Unlike some of the worthless officials, many don't appreciate a young eunuch hoarding attention no matter how beautiful. Jinshi's like, yeah, sorry, this is my duty. I really don't like it either, but here's what I'm doing. Here I am. Here's the blue roses. Ta-da. And I like that Jinshi, it almost seemed like in this moment, Jinshi was trying to see from Lolan, what to gauge from her reaction. Because he showed up with this gorgeous vase with all these flowers, upstaged her entire entrance to be like, here I am. And he says, lust is fine. You can exploit that. It's easy. Right? Which MaoMao is not lustful and neither is, Jinshi kind of is. So I think Lakan takes advantage of that. Again, easy to exploit. And then he says that envy is manageable, right? It's fine too. He's like, I can deal with envy. Envy, you can gauge people. Lust, manage that. He's like, what I don't like is when you look at someone and you can't get a read on them. So Lolan, she just looks like a doll. She has no expression. And then her father and the other guy just looks at him like, oh, you're making a scene in front of us? And it says, Shishan, concubine Lolan's father, the man favored by the mother of the former emperor. So he was on her good side. Yeah. That's such an age difference. What's going on there? So many mysteries about Shisho and Lolan. Even now, the emperor can't look him in the eye. So, favored by the emperor's mother, was he with her? Was that even allowed? Was he with her before the emperor, or the former emperor, his mom? Was she with him after his dad died or something? Well, when he became the emperor, because obviously he wouldn't get with his mom. So, or was he just a friend? There's so much mystery behind him. I want to know more, and the show is keeping it very close to the best. But what I love about this scene is when he says, he's like, the emperor can't look him in the eye because it's just too awkward, right? Because I'm assuming there's some bad blood with the former emperor's mom because of what we've heard from her so far. So the emperor doesn't really want to associate with Shisho. But then it's Jinshi's job and duty, because technically he's Jinshi and not related to the emperor. So he's like, I have to look at Shisho and I can't let my smile fade. I have to look at him and act like nothing is wrong. This isn't awkward and weird. And that's my job. And it's like, damn, Jinshi. So then, while all this political intrigue is going on, everyone's just kind of not knowing what to do. Lakan's just sitting there eating his chicken wings like he's at a Buffalo Wild Wings. Oh my God, the tactlessness of this man. He's like, there's one more who's more worrying than Shisho right now. And it's the man that looks like he has Dorito fingers. Oh my God. What gets me is like that man Lakan. Is he like, he's sitting there and takes one of the guy's hats and wipes his greasy fingers on there and gives it back. Now, next to him is some guy shaking, and I don't know why. Like, we see him like give the hat back, but there's some guy shaking next to him, and we don't. But then you go to him as he's looking at the roses, and there's nothing wrong with him. So maybe it's just a weird animation. Maybe he was laughing or something, and it was just a weird moment in the animation. But yeah, Lakan looks at the blue roses, and he's like, how annoying. Uh-huh. Because he didn't think Jinshi would pull it off. So meanwhile, MaoMao gets to sleep on her friend's lap, which is super cute. And then Jinshi shows up. And the moment Jinshi shows up with the rose, the friend's like, yoink, bye! Or it wasn't the friend that helped her in the greenhouse. It was one of Gyokyo's maids. But the moment that Jinshi shows up, she's like, I gotta go! I'll just hang around the side of the building and watch y'all. But yeah, I love Jinshi, like, lets her stay seated as he sits next to her. And she's like, I couldn't get them to fully bloom. And he's like, but you made it work. And then he's like, you're not apologizing to me, are you? I like that he says that. He's like, you did the impossible. You not only made the roses blue, you made the roses exist at all. So he's like, if you think that I'm going to accept an apology from you for putting in all this work, think again. But I love that she doesn't question him in the royal robes or anything. She's just like, she's too exhausted too at this point. And then he's like, never mind, you did well. He's like, don't mind me, but, you know, you're fine. And he's like, but how'd you do it? And that's when she explains the white roses and using the different dyes. I love it. And she's like, what was actually difficult was getting them to bloom at all. And he's like, simple indeed. She's like, also because some officials might have picked a quarrel about this, she's like, I went ahead and told the trick to the emperor. I like that she went ahead and did that, though, because that works on two fronts. One, it lets him know ahead of time so that, you know, if somebody does get all uppity about it, he can, like, know how to handle the situation. But two, whether MaoMao realizes it or not, she just got on the emperor's good side because she basically just told her father-in-law, she's like, here, I'll let you in on the little secret behind the curtain, just like I'm about to your son. And he's like, oh, because people like being in on secrets. It doesn't matter who you are. People like being in on how the sausage is made. We like knowing the details behind the scene, and humans like knowing secrets. So if it's a little secret that we know that nobody else does, why, that makes us feel special and important, and humans love that. So of course the emperor's gonna like that. I'm like, girl, you were fishing brownie points and you don't even realize it. Also, her robe came down and showed off her bandage, and Jinshi didn't comment about it. So I keep waiting for him to comment about it, and he doesn't. So maybe they're saving that for season 2. Although from the angle where they're sitting at, we can see her bandage through the sleeve. It's kind of like one of these numbers where we can see the bandage through her sleeve there. He probably can't. I'm like, I need him to see it so I can know. He's like, so about the story of the blue roses that are seen from the palace. And she says there must have been someone with a lot of free time feeding blue water to the roses. And that would be Lakan. And of course, Lakan would do that, you know, just to be like, look what I can do. And he's like, well, who would do something like that? She says, who knows? Maybe they wanted a gimmick to woo women. But she has this box that looks kind of like a coffin that she's putting this blue rose in. Oh my God. And then I like Jin. She's like, are you painting your nails? He's like, are you doing like this beauty thing? What are you doing? And that's when MaoMao replies, it doesn't suit me. She's like, and then she doesn't tell him this, but she says in the monologue, she's like, if I had some balsam and wood sorrel, I could have made them look prettier. And so she says balsam is used to dye fingernails and wood sorrel is a nickname for cat's foot. If you mix them together and apply them to the fingernails, it creates a very vivid red. But then, even if I did make them prettier, this is better than it was before. So she's been practicing painting her nails. She wants Lakan to see this. And I'm sure that in the OP there's a shot of someone painting their nails, now that I think about it. And so that was probably the mom, because we saw with the Go pieces there was a nail painted as well. So she wants it to look like the mom. And then she's like, did you get the item I requested? And he says, yes, as you wished. And she's like, what's going on? He's like, what? And she says, now the stage is set. All I have to do is catch that nasty creep off guard. So MaoMao's been planning something. She's been planning this Shakespearean revenge since the 80s, as comedian Chris Fleming would say. I'm so fascinated. And meanwhile, Lakan's sitting there about to snooze over his food like a big old dweeb. And she's like, interesting. So they have the garden party dance. Everything seems fine. And Lakan's like, well, I didn't expect my provocation to fail and for them to actually do it. And that's, as he's walking back, he talks about how all the people look like Go pieces, which is just so creepy to me. And then, yeah, he's like, most humans just look like Go stones to me. The black stones are men, the white ones are women. Even my subordinates in the military only appear as chess pieces as best, and they're all labeled as pawns. Most are soldiers or pawns. As they gain ranks, they become cavalry and cannons. And then he talks about working in the military. He says doing military work is easy. You just have to know where to put the pieces. And treating the people like pieces, right? The right pieces in the right places. Most wars can be won by that alone. It's easy, even if I were completely useless. As long as I placed others in the right places, the work would get done on its own. That in itself is telling, because that's basically saying, he's like, as long as I put the right people down for the right jobs, we'll be fine. I'm like, that makes it sound like he could stack the board and let the pieces fall where they land and things would work out. So it kind of goes back to the lead episode 15, or 16. 16 was lead, 15 was raw fish. But it goes back to the lead episode where, as long as he put MaoMao, he basically treated his daughter like a piece on a board and was like, if I put her in the right place, she'll solve the problem for me, which is kind of disgusting in itself. The idea of treating people like just pieces on a board. It's like, yeah. And then he talks about his eyes hurt. Now, when he says his eyes hurt more than usual and red color keeps flicking into his view, oh, that's from the nails. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, there you go. And he's like, the manicures. I'm like, the manicures in my memories aren't this overly flamboyant crimson. MaoMao was getting everybody to get these manicures around the palace grounds to like set this up. Girl played long game. Oh, I'm so ready for next episode already. But he's like, my memories don't show manicures this crimson. And then he says the manicures in his memory, they're soft like the color of balsam. That's why MaoMao wanted it to imitate her mom's. Yeah. So then when he looks up, he stops in his tracks. Everyone has a piece on their face. Her nails are the soft color like balsam. Her face looks absolutely like she'd rather be anywhere else. She's not smiling looking at him. She's not smiling like she's enjoying this. She's just like, well, now I have to face, because this is the first time they've seen each other face to face. Right? And the two people behind, one piece says the bishop and one piece says the advisor. And then she has no piece over her face. I wonder if he's given, like the white stones, the stones with the labels on them aren't black. They're given white stones. And I don't know if that's just because they're soldiers or if he thinks that Jinshi and Gaoshun are eunuchs and that's why the white piece. But okay, so on a Go board, I want to see the rank of the pieces. So Go board piece ranks. Okay. So is there the Go board pieces? I want to find that. Okay. So there's different stones. Will they tell me about the different stones and what they mean? It says they're 18 black and 181 black and 180 white goishi, or flat round pieces called stones, on a wooden square board of Goban, checkered by 19 vertical lines and 19 horizontal lines to form 361 intersections. So does it give me a name for each of the pieces, perhaps? I know a bishop is a piece in chess, but advisor is not a piece in chess. I want to know, what are the Go stones? Go board game piece names. Here we go. Is there a list? Tell me. I want to know. Go board game advisor. It's not going to give me the answer. Boo. Boo. It's fine. I feel like it's interesting that he refers to Jinshi as the advisor. I guess because he's the advisor to the emperor. But with him thinking that he's more than that, it's interesting that he gives him that line. Gaoshan as the bishop makes a lot of sense. So that's interesting to me. And then MaoMao, she has a different box in her hand than the box that the rose was in. So I'm assuming that's what Gaoshan got for her. I wonder if she's going to play a game of Go against Lakan. That would be interesting if she was. I don't know, but I'm real curious to see what we get next episode. That's for sure. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead next week and read chapter 14. See what that's like. And I'm going to get stuff together for being ready comment-wise and to talk about The Last Eunuch of China. But next week is the penultimate episode of season 1. So excited! Yes! Get excited, y'all, because episode 23 of the Apothecary Diaries is next week. I hope you all have a wonderful week yourselves. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 23 of season 1 of the Apothecary Diaries. And we'll see what MaoMao does. Bye!